The West Mesa Bone Collector, an unsolved series of murders discovered in New Mexico in 2009. This case is 100% real and verified through Albuquerque Police Department records, FBI releases, and extensive national reporting. On February 2, 2009, a woman walking her dog on Albuquerque's West Mesa noticed a bone jutting from the dirt. She thought it was from an animal until she saw the smooth shape of a human femur. Police closed off the scrubland and called in archaeologists and crime scene teams. Over the next months, detectives unearthed the remains of 11 women and 1 unborn child, scattered across a ridge of wind-carved sand in Kalish. Bulldozers scraped gently. Grid squares were mapped. The desert gave back its dead, bone by bone. Most victims were young women who had gone missing between 2001 and 2005. Many struggled with addiction or were involved in street-level sex work. One was pregnant. Their names, once whispered in missing person flyers, became a roll call etched into city memory. Victoria Chavez, Cinnamon Elks, Julie Nito, Monica Candelaria, Doreen Marquez, Veronica Romero, Evelyn Salazar, and her unborn child, Virginia Cloven, Jamie Barella, Solania Edwards, and Michelle Valdez. 10 families got partial answers where their daughters were, but not the answer that matters most. Who did this, and why? The geography was chilling. From the edge of the mesa, you can see the growing city, new subdivisions, and a line where light ends and desert begins. In the early 2000s, this was emptiness. No streetlights, no cameras, just tire ruts and a steady wind. The killer, investigators believe, drove victims there at night and returned to the same ridge again and again, confident no one would see. Construction later reshaped the ground, but back then the sand concealed everything. Detectives built a multi-agency task force. They combed missing persons reports, cross-checked phone records, interviewed pimps, girlfriends, and patrol officers who had worked the old corridors along Central Avenue. They chased rumors of a photographer with a silver SUV, a transient drifter, and a contractor who bragged about desert parties. DNA told the story of who the victims were, but it said nothing about the hands that buried them. Leads rose and fell. One boy died of natural causes before he could be thoroughly questioned. Another vanished back to Texas. A third, connected to several victims socially, denied involvement and passed away years later. The task force searched houses, storage lockers, arroyos, and abandoned motels. They flew helicopters over the mesa and used ground-penetrating radar. No murder site was ever found. The dumping ground was not the killing ground. Families of the missing carried grief, like a season that would not change. They held prayer walks on the ridge and placed crosses that the wind tried to topple. Mothers brought photos in plastic sleeves, taped to their coats so dust wouldn't erase the faces. They learned the language of evidence-dental comparisons, isotope tests. Mitochondrial DNA waited for phone calls that rang in the middle of the night. Albuquerque wrestled with larger questions. Why had so many disappearances drawn so little attention at the time? Did the city fail women on the margins? Police admitted what many already knew. A killer had hunted in plain sight, selecting victims who were unlikely to be missed quickly. Who could be lured into cars with promises of cash, warmth, or a quiet night? After 2009, outreach teams expanded, vice stings shifted, and the city tried to map the gaps where people fall through. The ridge is different now. Development has pressed closer. A memorial garden stands near the site with stones engraved with the victims' names. The desert still looks the same at dusk purple mountains, long shadows, but it holds a memory. When the wind lifts, it sounds like cloth moving, like a whisper that says keep looking. Detectives insist the case is solvable. Somewhere there is a storage unit with trophies, a garage where a particular shovel once leaned, a box of Polaroids nobody wants to touch. Someone knows which nights the tires sank, and which brand of cigarette was flicked into the sand. Someone rode in the passenger seat and kept quiet. Time erodes bones, but it also loosens tongues. If you drive west on Central and turn toward the empty, you can still see the line where the city ends. Imagine headlamps cutting through dust, a car door opening, a promise offered softly, a name spoken for the last time. Imagine a killer counting on silence and distance to do the rest. The West Mesa Bone Collector has not been caught. 11 women and 1 unborn child were recovered. Others may still be there, beyond the grids that were searched, in ground yet to be turned by storm or tractor. What began with a dog walk and a glint of white remains a question that hangs over the city. Who hunted its margins, and how many? If you know something, even years later, you can reopen the road back to a name, a house, a face. The desert keeps its secrets, but it does not keep all of them forever. Investigators still re-interview associates who were alive in the early 2000s, revisit tow records, and audit burner phone purchases tied to the corridors where several victims last worked. They publish periodic appeals, reminding the public that unidentified remains are regularly matched years after recovery. When relatives submit DNA, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System lists continue to evolve. Each new entry can unlock an old crime. Community groups in Albuquerque host remembrance events every February. Advocates deliver water, test kits, and safer trade information directly to street corners, arguing that visibility saves lives. Families push for a cold case unit with ring-fenced funding, so shifts and retirements do not erase momentum. Tip lines stay open. A billboard has appeared and disappeared along I-40 more than once, its message the same. Someone knows. There is also the geography of memory. People who move to the new subdivisions learn only later that their jogging paths trace the edge of a mass crime scene. Landscapers installing irrigation discover dense soil layers and pause without meaning to. Hikers stop on the ridge at sunset and read the names in the memorial garden aloud, because speaking a name keeps it real. What would justice look like after so long? Detectives talk about a chain of corroboration, property records, receipts, a surviving confidant, a garage search warrant, a single photograph that anchors a chronology. Prosecutors talk about juries and time, about how to try a case that is mostly sand and wind. Families want one thing above all: to be sure. If you lived in Albuquerque then, you remember nightly news choppers, the grid tapes fluttering, the white tents against bronze dust. If you arrived later, you inherit the story the way a city inherits, a riverbed shaped by what passed through. 11 women and 1 unborn child were found. The ground remembers them in winter shadows and summer heat. Somewhere, there is a person who has rehearsed a set of denials for years. Somewhere, there is another person who never asked enough questions in the moment and cannot sleep through February. Somewhere, in a box that was never thrown away, there is a receipt that does not make sense until someone says a name out loud. The West Mesa case sits in that narrow place between mystery and answer. The wind writes and erases tracks on the same day. The city keeps faith with the science, and with the stubborn act of knocking on one more door. The desert kept its secret for years. It does not have to keep the last of it.